The Miami Hurricanes defensive backfield is completely revamped and transformed, but there is one wide receiver everybody's struggling to cover in practice.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As we just got out of Miami's second spring football practice here in 2025, we're going to celebrate 305 Day today by talking about the players wearing the numbers 3, 0, and 5 on the team this year. We got insights this afternoon from new defensive coordinator Corey Hetherman, not only on what he's trying to establish here at Miami, but what he's looking for in his new players. New defense for the players, of course, new personnel for the coach, and what he's trying to figure out over these next few weeks. And yeah, JoJo Trader continues to perform well, but I'm not sleeping on Miami's defensive backfield. That unit has been transformed. We're liking what we're seeing from some of the new guys, some of the returning guys. Let's bring on someone that probably needs no introduction, but we'll do it anyway. Peter Ariz, been a friend of mine for many years now, CanesInsight.com. We had your guy D-Money on recently. I thought we got to get Pete back on the show as well. And Peter, of course, I've seen you out at practice today, Wednesday, and out at Monday as well. Let's start with the defensive backfield. Who has stood out to you in that unit?
Well, Alex, first of all, thank you so much. Obviously, a big fan of what you do here at Locked On Canes every day. Defensive backfield obviously was a huge issue for Miami last year. I think for me, right off the bat, Zachariah Poyser from Jacksonville State has been a guy as a transfer who was an all-conference player at Jacksonville State, obviously taking a jump up in competition. So whenever you see that sort of jump, the first thing I'm looking at is the physical tools. And we've seen him there in pads, looks the part, man. Looks like someone who's twitchy, who we've seen on film the speed that he has, but stacks up and looks how you want them to look at that position. And I think he's someone who's going to slot in very nicely and be an instant upgrade. So that's from the transfer standpoint, right off the bat, he's someone at the safety spot that has stood out to me. Dylan Day, I thought today at safety had a really, again, in our limited time that we get to watch there in the media viewing about half an hour or so, made a really nice break on the ball. And someone who flashed a lot in special teams last year, Alex, he was flying around last year, physical, comes in out of Louisiana. And he was a guy that Coach Guidry, obviously, Canes fans, we're past it. We're not going to say anything bad about him now. We're on to a new defensive coordinator here in Coach Hetherman. But he was a guy that Guidry was very, very high on with his roots in Louisiana and had a lot of good things to say about him across the way. And I'm telling you, Alex, I think he's someone that people might have forgotten about a bit in that room. And I'm looking at him as someone who has a real chance to move up that depth chart and take some snaps, I think, this spring.
Yeah, Dylan Day's a great one to bring up. And, we heard about him reportedly having good offseason workouts. And then, like you mentioned today, saw Day actually intercept a Judd Anderson pass in drills today. I saw some good stuff from Amari Wallace. And I know Wallace comes in with like a certain amount of instant pressure because he's wearing the number 26. And I don't think he's necessarily doing that on purpose, but we all know who number 26 used to belong to. And Amari Wallace is out there practicing really hard today. I saw him make a pass breakup in drills. And then another true freshman, Peter, who, and again, folks, just to be perfectly clear and transparent, we're talking about guys practicing in shorts, no pads on. So the truth is going to be told truly when the pads come on. But I'm also liking what I'm seeing from Chris Ewald Jr., Peter, another true freshman, showed some good footwork. He was working some at safety today from what we saw. And I don't want people to read too much into that because they're going to be using guys at multiple different spots. Like some guys you may think of as corners are going to get work at safety. Some guys you think of as Mike linebackers are going to be playing Will and vice versa. But I liked what I saw from Ewald today.
Yeah, there's been very good buzz on him during the workouts, even before this portion of spring practice starting, which is more real football. But you mentioned a lot of these guys with that versatility, and there's a lot of numbers at corner. You needed to bring in a lot because of what we saw last year, but you have body types that can play. Say, Damari Brown, he's someone who could potentially play a safe spot. Emmanuel Carnley, could he, with his length from Arizona, he's someone who could play some safety as well. But so Ewald is someone, as a young guy coming in. OJ Frederick last year, he came out of nowhere essentially, and Ewald is actually kind of rated a bit higher than Frederick was coming in here. Ewald's 4-star out of Chaminade Madonna. And locally, there's been a lot of buzz because, there's always chatter locally about, man, this guy wasn't rated high enough, right? We see him every Friday down here in South Florida against what we consider the best competition. And I'm talking as if I'm a high school coach or someone in the here. They always think certain guys are underrated. He is someone who, even as a 4-star, people thought was not getting enough attention nationally. And I think he's come in here and shown the coaches that he's someone they can trust right away.
Yeah, I mean, Ewald's like in high school, he had to defend a couple years ago Jeremiah Smith and JoJo Trader in practice. So, this is probably easy compared to what he had at Chaminade practices a couple of years ago. Someone who gets we get asked about this a lot. I'm sure you guys do as well from CanesInsight. I definitely like what I've seen so far in the limited action and the physical profile and all that. Xavier Lucas. Like he looks like a dude. Like you could see, the physicality seems to be there at 200 plus pounds. Have you had a chance to watch him a little bit these first couple days?
Yes, I mean a legit 6'1" plus. I would say that's the other thing. Some people have said 6'2", but I think you can really say 6'1". Look, we love our boy Cam Gorby, but I don't know how updated these rosters, these height and weights are. So people freak out at a lot of this stuff. No, but without a doubt, I think he's someone who I have high expectations for.
All right, so let's talk about on the other end, and in again the what we've been able to watch out there in practice, and they start to do the one-on-one drills and some of these passing drills. So far, JoJo Trader, he has lived up to the hype coming in, right? I mean, with all the receivers Miami lost from last year, Trader got the endorsement from Cam Ward at the combine, said this is the next guy. He's going to be one of the best receivers in the country. And Trader is practicing that way so far. I almost, feel bad for the guys who have to match up against him on the practice field. Today it was, he beat, I think it was Emmanuel Carnley. Yeah. He beat on an Emory Williams deep ball that was very nicely thrown, corner of the end zone kind of thing. And he's making plays like that, Peter, so far every day.
Yeah, a few things with it. Number one, Cam Ward he's obviously a straight shooter, so he's not going to go out of his way to give someone his certification there, especially at the NFL Combine, right? So that's a great sign. But I think a couple things with JoJo. One, banged up early in the year last year, and I think that maybe stunted his growth a bit. Needed to put some weight on. Another guy who I'm looking at the roster right now, listed at 180. It was 175 or so coming out of high school. I think has to be more than 180 right now, and his body just seems in a way better place in terms of sturdiness and being able to play through a bit of contact there. So obviously still would expect Miami to probably bring in one more receiver, but I think the expectation in the building is that Trader is going to take that next step and has been doing so all off season long. So excited for his development without a doubt.
Guys, we're going to continue recapping the second day of Miami Hurricanes spring football practice today. We got more standouts and intriguing ideas that we need to talk about, including insight that was shared today from Miami's new defensive coordinator on how he is using this practice time. You guys want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, you can get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast, from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. We are live here on Locked On Canes. So if you're watching us right now on YouTube, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, wherever you got your pods. And we're so happy to be joined here by Peter Ariz from CanesInsight.com. And Peter's busy today because I think CIS just had a live stream a little while ago. So Peter was warmed up. So he was ready to go for this one.
Yeah.
And so, Pete, let's look. You were talking defensive backfield. Something people need to understand about Corey Hetherman's defensive philosophy. He spoke to the media after practice today. I really get the sense that he's got a great grasp already of his personnel. He seems to know kind of the strengths and personal characteristics of a lot of his players because we were running a lot of names by him today. But obviously, when it comes to the on-the-field stuff, he's still learning. And something that Hetherman emphasized to us today, Peter, is he referred to the idea that they're kind of playing positionless defense right now. It doesn't mean they just have 11 guys running around. That means that, hey, certain players we may think of as being corners are getting kind of tried out at safety and nickel. We've all heard by now about Wesley Basaint, who's getting some work at Mike linebacker and Will linebacker. They're doing that sort of an experimentation so they can really get a good idea of who fits where.
And why would you not, just looking at the defensive backfield to start, we kind of alluded to it before. Xavier Lucas, 6'1", 200 plus, with that length is a huge weapon as a corner on the outside. But would you like him to maybe match up with a big time tight end on the other side, right? Would you like to maybe play him at free safety sometimes? Currently, we talked about him, Damari Brown. We've seen him play in the slot. We've seen him as a blitzer. We've seen him match up with was it Keon Coleman a couple of years ago for Florida State and did a pretty good job as a true freshman. Obviously had his injuries last year. Could he play some safety? Because we know he's a physical player as well who's not afraid to come up and play. And then you look at linebacker, Bobby Pruitt, Darius Hayes, these body types, these Chase Smiths of the world that I still have a lot of, hope for. Just seeing him walk around out there, that Kellen Wiley Jr. as a freshman. Talk about someone from a body type standpoint that's impressive and looks how it's supposed to look. So you have a lot of body types that have the ability to play different roles. Now, I think we all understand getting these guys to understand what their roles might be, playing different spots and getting it to work together. That's a whole different ball game. And that's something we talk about on CIS all the time, is like, this collection of talent is way better. Now let's see how everyone kind of finds their role and plays a part to the puzzle.
Let's expand on that note, because Peter, everyone knows you've been covering Miami football for a long time, and you are of the age, like I imagine, what are you, like around 30 or so?
I'm 30, man. I'm 30.
You're 30. So I know like you've definitely covered some teams that, weren't that good at Miami.
Some, Alex. Unfortunately, we all love the Canes, but most of the teams haven't been very good. It's exciting to cover them now because things are on the uppity up, man.
Yeah, and on that note, like, because you've been out there year after year covering spring practice, covering fall practices. Yeah, how do you feel about the quality of athletes and also the quality of personalities? Because there were a lot of years, Peter, where I can remember certain, 2013, 2015 type of era where there also wasn't a lot of leadership on the field. Like, what do you make of the current group that Mario Cristobal has?
First of all, from you asked about the athletic standpoint, as someone who's, been an agent and represent NFL players as well, like 10 guys at the combine is a huge deal. And that's what you just saw right now. Is it all top end, first, second, third round talent? I think there's a couple guys, obviously Cam Ward, Elijah Roy, who will fit that bill. But from what Mario Cristobal took over to now, the talent's on a whole different level, right? And I think the foundation is really, really solid for this next year in important positions. From a leadership standpoint, I think Ryan Rodriguez touched on it today. I think the standard has just been set a little different. We all wanted this team to be able to take a jump from where they were when Mario took over to winning the ACC right away. Could they have done it last year? I think that obviously we all think that they had the ability to do it last year. It didn't happen, but there are steps that need to take place. And that foundation, that leadership, it's not just a handful of guys that are leaders. It needs to be a daily expectation across the board and a standard that's set. And I think that has been put in place now. You can confidently say that. I think so. You're there every day as well, Alex. So we walk around there. It just feels like a more legitimate operation. It's hard to kind of put that into words sometimes. But again, even myself talking to people on the NFL side, from personnel, the scouts that go through there, it's run like a big time program should be run in all aspects. So still gotta get those big time results on the field and go out there and win the ACC. That's got to be the goal. But I think they're in a great place right now.
By the way, there's a lot of comments coming in on the live chat, and since we haven't talked yet today about Carson Beck, who still isn't throwing, but he's out there. Like, his presence is felt on the practice field as he awaits clearance to throw the football. We get this one from our guy Yahala Kane, who says, "Hey, I know everyone is adamant that Beck is the starter, but if anyone on the roster shows better, does Mario have the abilities or the balls to sit Beck?" Well, first of all, like, it's hard to even answer that question, Peter, because I really do not expect anyone currently on this roster to actually beat out a healthy Carson Beck. I mean, you're talking about someone who, you go back to his time at Mandarin High School, was absolutely elite coming out of high school. In fact, Ryan Rodriguez, who talked to the media today, mentioned, like, when he was at Columbus, I think in his sophomore year, he faced off in a state championship game against Beck's Mandarin team and said it was the most impressive high school quarterbacking performance he's ever seen. And of course, had a great record, Georgia. So, I mean, first of all, like, if your hypothetical were to play out and, like, someone would literally be better than Beck, like, you would like to think the best guy is always going to play. But Peter, I do not expect that to happen.
Yeah, I don't either. When it comes to Mario is playing the best guys to me, and I still don't. I know everyone understands there's NIL involved. This still isn't pro football at the same token, where the owner is the one pit. There's not one singular owner of the team who's coming down saying, Mario, I'm paying this guy this. We need to play this guy. I still don't see that dynamic coming into college football just yet. But I would be very hard-pressed to find that. Mario will play the best guys. I don't have a doubt about that, though.
Yeah, and a couple people in the comments are saying, well, what if Beck isn't healthy? Peter, we have no reason to believe he won't be. I mean,
that and I was going to say, you said 100 Carson Beck at 100%. I don't think anyone's going to beat him out. Carson Beck at 80% might be right. But like you said, there's no reason to believe that. This was not a full, like, Tommy John surgery as we understand. And everything, Mario has said certain things about what the timetable is for him to throw. I don't want to speculate on any of that necessarily. He said he expects to be throwing obviously by the end of spring. To what degree, I don't know. Yeah. I don't expect to see him in full pads going through stuff too much here in the near future. But at the end of the day, he's taken a lot of reps. Need to get him throwing with the receivers here in the early summer, I would say, and get that timing down. But in terms of leading an offense and having played in these big games, big time moments, he's going to be ready for that. So I'm not necessarily concerned in that aspect.
Pete, another group we got a chance to watch today, because for a time they were positioned like right in front of the media sideline, were the running backs. And I enjoy watching Matt Merritt coach that group, and something that I noticed that, and I want to explain this in a way that it doesn't make it sound like this player isn't doing well, because he is, but I really enjoyed the way that Matt Merritt was given like a little extra attention to Girard Pringle because he's the only inexperienced guy in the running back room. Like all the other, running backs are experienced. Most of them played for Merritt last year. So I noticed like a little bit of in an appropriate way, and he's doing well, but like the extra instruction, which I think is good contextual coaching, that maybe, the early enrollee is going to need like a little extra explanation for this drill that the other guys have run before. To me, Chris Humphrey, I think, has put on a little bit of weight, Peter.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought Jordan Lyle looks good, as you would expect today.
Yeah, Lyle, I've been saying, man, with that number change to number 2, he's looking even bigger than he looked last year. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the work he's put in the weight room, but he already came in ready from a physical standpoint.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm a big fan, first of all, like you said, of Coach Merritt. I think there was like a little bit of, I don't want to call it question marks when he came in. There was people saying, well, what are his credentials? Who is he recruited? Who are the running backs he's coached? Based off what we saw last year, obviously he had a very talented backfield, but the names that Miami continues to be in the mix for recruiting wise, who Miami beat Girard Pringle out for, or who they beat out for Girard Pringle, I should say. And Pringle, man, talk about someone who's going to have a big opportunity, as well as Humphrey, because we obviously feel pretty good about Fletcher and Lyle being 1 and 2 and being the workhorses, but you need someone to step up after that. You absolutely need it. And Pringle brings a little bit of that different element to the table. He's what some would say is more of a scat back, but has the ability in his film that you see bouncing off these tackles. He's smaller, but he's also not a skinny guy either, right? And he has that low center of gravity. So someone who can make an impact. But man, with these young backs, I'll say the same thing about Humphrey, right? Picking up the pass protection, the blitzes, because that's really what, outside of his dynamic ability as a runner, but Jordan Lyle, that's what got him on the field early. Mark Fletcher does the same thing. Very, very good as blockers. And you look, everyone says, man, let's get them out there on a third down, throw them a little screen, dump them out of the backfield. Half the time they got to pick up the blitz first, right? So if they can't do that part of it, it's a hard time for them to get on the field. But Coach Merritt really, love his attention to detail with these guys. And I think he's one of the rising stars on this staff.
Yeah, no, for sure. I enjoy watching Coach Merritt. Everybody knows I enjoy watching Kevin Beard, who is he's one of the best, most animated teachers. And I'm already enjoying watching Will Harris and Zach Etheridge. We got to look at their units. But when we come back, I want to celebrate 305 Day, and the only way Miami fans can, or Miami Hurricanes fans can anyway. There's a lot of ways to celebrate 305 Day, but I also I want Peter and I to talk about a linebacker who I thought made a surprisingly physical play today, even on a day when you're not in pads. You want to keep it locked right here, my friends. We're nowhere near done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On College Football. I did a spot this week with Spencer McLaughlin, who hosts that show. And man, Spencer's got a fun gig because he gets to talk about all the big storylines. And of course, during the season, all the big college football games. We were talking about the ACC settlement, and we were talking a little bit about Carson Beck. So make sure you check out Locked On College Football like this show. It's available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. Someone who got the indoor facility a little noisy today, making a physical play, and he's someone that's definitely noticeable in practice, is Cameron Bobby Pruitt at linebacker. Heading into his second year, he was someone who got on the field a little bit, got some special teams work in. What kind of a role are you expecting for Bobby Pruitt this year?
A bigger one, that's for sure, than last year. I think he's someone who maybe could have helped Miami. You don't want to throw too much on a freshman linebacker's plate. I think he was maybe a guy that was he was a specialized role, right, as a blitzer or matching up with a tight end. But he's someone who I think can really cover. Had a nice rep in coverage on Monday, I believe it was, right? So Monday, and on Jack Nickel, you see his fluidity, the length. Obviously can strike and get downhill, but these linebackers, you want to see them being able to play in the middle of the field and not kind of feel like they're isolated on an island, right? And not get stuck in mud. And he's someone with that twitchiness that he brings to the table, should be to me, one of the top 2 or 3 linebackers on this team. If he hits that ceiling, and he's someone that I think Hetherman, as from what we've heard, really likes to use length at that position and can kind of get creative with a guy like him.
Yeah, and Hetherman spoke about Pruitt after practice today, and first thing that he praised, actually even before the physical stuff, is his intelligence, and that tracks with what I heard last year. And I had a chance last season when he was a freshman to interview Pruitt, and you could tell he's got knowledge, soaking in knowledge of the game, and teammates of his would say the same thing, that he's just incredibly cerebral. And all right, so Peter, since it's March the 5th, 305 day. Let's take a look at players that wear the numbers 3, 0, and 5 on the Miami roster. Because Peter, we got two of them, both sides of the ball for each of these numbers. I think they're all going to be contributors this year. If we start with the number 3, we've got Akeem Mesidor, who's on the last ride this year, final season, what, a 5th or a 6th year, maybe even senior now at Miami. His 4th year at Miami, was at West Virginia before that. And Josh Moore on offense, who, he's a true freshman, the receiver, but physically looks like he may be able to contribute this year already.
Yeah, we've used the word from a physical we've used physical standpoint, athletic standpoint a lot in this show, but that's when you talk about Moore, like, he stands out amongst his peers, right? There's a lot of impressive body types on this roster right now, but compared to the other receivers in the room, just kind of towers over them and has some good movement ability there. And Mesidor, I think, made a good decision to come back here, get another year in here, get that NIL money, and really coming back last year. I don't know that he was playing the best role for himself, having to play more inside. I think could make a better impact on the edge that we saw later in the season with him. People forget how productive he was his first year at Miami. Then the injury happened. So you get him back to form, and you're going to need it because he's one of the vets there, and you love the veterans in the trenches. But excited about both of those number 3s.
Yeah, and Mesidor is excited to play in Hetherman's defense. And he even said today, it's like, as Hetherman will ask players for feedback and stuff after practice. And then Mesidor also, he says, "I love it, coach," because, he, first of all, he gets to play, as we expect, full-time defensive end this year, like you said, which is the more natural spot for him. And, he really gets to have a more direct, simpler approach to getting in the backfield compared to Guidry's defense. He seems to really enjoy what he's about to play. If we take a look at the number 0, we've already talked a lot about JoJo Trader. He's been like the lead story the last couple of days. But what about Zaquan Patterson, who moved? He was number 20 last year. Zaquan's now got that number 0 on defense. With all the new defensive backs Miami has brought in, what kind of a role do you expect Patterson to play this year?
I think Zaquan Patterson, Alex, is someone who we're not going to see the best of him here without the pads on. I think,
great point.
I think he's someone who the physicality is what separates him, and the willingness to tackle. It's one thing to say these guys they look good and they run, but are you willing to get downhill and meet someone at the line of scrimmage and deliver a blow? Zaquan Patterson, without a doubt, he showed that in high school, and then in his role last year a bit, I think showed that. I think he's someone up near the line of scrimmage who can really excel, against the run, matching up against some of these tight ends, H-backs. And I think that's the role that I foresee him kind of playing up near the line of scrimmage, kind of being able to create some havoc in the backfield.
So from the 3 and the 0 to the 5, a couple players on each side of the football that I think have big opportunities this year. Nathaniel Ray Joseph on offense, because listen, he's got a chance, right? I mean, he was behind Xavier Restrepo. Nobody was beating that dude out the last couple of years. So Ray has his opportunity this year to get on the field a lot more. And then Justin Scott on defense, former 5-star recruit from a couple of cycles ago at defensive tackle. He's got every opportunity as well, Peter.
Justin Scott looks good, man. I know obviously they're kind of on the other side of the field when we're there in practice, but he's very hard to miss. The weight's been put on, had a basketball background, so I think was a bit light last year as a freshman. it's those interior defensive linemen. That's one of the toughest positions for them to be beasts right away, I think. So I think needed this year to get that weight on. He looks awesome. And Ray Joseph, man, I was actually defending him on our show CanesInsight earlier because I think people give him, he hasn't lived up to the expectations. There's a lot of talk about him coming out. But one thing we can all say about him is he's one of the hardest workers in the building. I think sometimes with a guy like that, although people say, well, he's had opportunities, he hasn't claimed it. I think sometimes maybe in his position was pressing a bit because said, man, I gotta do a lot to overcome the fact that I'm behind Restrepo and some of these other guys. And maybe now that he's been here for a couple of years, feels, we know the work he puts in, feels like it's his time and is able to take that next step. So I'm hoping for him. Great kid. And, we're obviously rooting for him.
So someone who does not wear the number 3, 0, or 5, but we got a question here in the chat. Sorry, that's the wrong one. Hello, Tom. But here's the one from Ray's Kane. Josh Horton. I didn't really know I thought he got some prominent looking reps on Monday. I wasn't looking as much for Josh Horton today, but I think he's got an opportunity to do well as also a DT.
So someone asked us about him earlier too, and at the same time, me and D Money said he looks huge. And and I'll say this can go for other guys on the roster too, but for Horton, I pay attention to guys, Alex, who stick around. Not only don't transfer out, but we all understand in this NIL transfer portal era, like there are guys who are maybe asked to leave or the writing's on a wall. I'll say that they understand maybe there isn't a spot for them. Horton's someone that there's still been hope about. He was banged up last year. That's been kind of an issue, staying, keeping the weight in a good place and getting himself in peak form. That's got to be what it's about. But there's not anyone else on the roster that looks like him. Justin Scott is getting closer to that from at that position, so those outliers, you gotta have a hope for a guy like that. So hopefully there's a spring he puts it all together.
I appreciate everyone so much for being here. Make sure if you're watching us live on YouTube, smash that thumbs up button, like this episode. And if you've been here and you haven't subscribed yet, it's free. You realize it costs nothing to subscribe. So hit that subscribe button, and also make sure it's great to have Peter here today, but make sure you check out CanesInsight because those guys are doing awesome work. He and D Money and Mike Ryan, who we all know from the Levitard show. Mike is another guy. I know Mike for a year. I aged myself.
You guys are pioneers at this point of the industry, man. You guys have been doing it at a high level for a while.
Well, I appreciate you, Peter. And I remember when Peter was like not even old enough to drink, and he was breaking news stories.
That's why you said I'm 30, but I've been really covering the team since I was 15 years old, man. So I feel it's like I go back a ways now, past my time in a sense.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, you're 30 in real life, but you're 40 in reporter years or dog years or something.
Dog years, right? It might be, man. Covering the Canes might be something different than dog years. Might be 10 years per actual year. I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, Peter does an awesome job. Guys, make sure you follow Peter, you follow us at Locked On Canes, and we'll talk to everyone next time. I believe we're going to have the recruiting overlord on our next episode to talk about some of the awesome visitors. And of course, we talked about it here, but the Ben Cogden verbal commit, we'll talk more with Brian Smith about that on our next episode right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.